We are fast approaching the end of 2024, and you know what that means, don't you? The internet, social media, YouTube is suddenly awash with videos, articles and posts, all talking about how you can level up your life before 2025 rolls around. And so in today's video, I decided to jump on the bandwagon a little bit and share with you ways that you can level up your life, inspired by the life that I lead here in South Italy, because I've always said it, Italy is your greatest teacher. In fact, I wrote a book all about it and the lessons that I learned from life here in South Italy. I'll put the link up here and also below in the show notes if you want to go and take a look. So I know firsthand how Italy can make positive transformations in your life in different areas. So let's talk about some of those, shall we? Let's talk about diet. Now, diet is one area where I have radically transformed since moving to Italy, and of course, for the better. My diet in the UK, as most of you already know by now, was pretty terrible. This was my personal diet. There are plenty of people who eat very healthily in the UK. We are not all the same, but my personal diet was terrible. I relied a lot on frozen food, fast food and ready meals. And so I didn't feel necessarily as healthy as I do today. But it's really interesting because since moving to Italy, I have a greater appreciation for ingredients. I'm definitely more aware of the different types of ingredients that go into dishes. And also, I don't really eat fast food very often. Apart from things like frozen vegetables and, ice cream, I don't really eat any other types of frozen food. Until this week, and it was this little matter that really solidified just how much I've changed in this period, because this week I fancied some frozen food. I fancied two different types of frozen food. I fancied sofficini, which are like little pastries with different fillings, very popular with aperitivos. And then I also fancied chicken fingers, so like fish fingers, bastoncini, just the chicken variety. And so we bought these two types of frozen food and we ate these two types of frozen food. And afterwards I felt really terrible. I felt greasy from the inside out. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt even a little bit sick. And it was in that moment that I realized just how much I've changed, because I used to live off that type of food in the UK. And so this is how I know that, living here in Italy really does give you a greater appreciation for food. Now, I kind of know what you're probably thinking, things like the cost of living crisis, things like this make you more aware of the money that you spend when you decide to eat healthily, because deciding to eat healthily often means you will pay more for certain ingredients, for fresh fruit and vegetables. It kind of goes without saying. However, I just want to give you a bit of contrast, because even if you think it is better to buy a processed jar of sauce, for example, to cook with your meat or with your pasta, because it's on offer, because it's cheaper, it's not going to be good for you. It's going to be laden with sugar, salt, and all sorts of other things that you don't know about. There are, however, alternative things that you can cook that are fresh and that are really cheap. In fact, check out this recipe up here. This has to be one of Italy's cheapest recipes, and it is absolutely delicious, and it's super, super simple to make. So it is entirely possible. We don't need to lean into the whole it's cheaper to buy this instead of this mindset, because there are workarounds. There are things that you can do that are going to still cost you less money than buying processed junk, essentially. Now, when it comes to pasta, this is another myth that I really want to debunk, because I grew up my entire life believing that pasta was unhealthy to eat on a regular basis. Maybe once a week, maybe a couple of times a month, but absolutely, certainly not every single day. I'm sitting here now telling you that I have eaten pasta pretty much every single day for the past 6 years, and I have never felt better. So it is absolutely 100% a myth. But what I think makes it so is that here in Italy, what is cooked with the pasta is fresh. Whereas the example I've just given you from the UK, we will tend to lean more towards ready-made jars of pasta sauce and condiments rather than making them from scratch. And so naturally, if you're going to accompany your pasta with these kinds of sauces, it's going to become unhealthy for you. It's not going to be the same as if you cook it with something fresh. And so just to kind of give you a different perspective, I love pasta with tomato. Like, it's one of my favourite combinations, but you can make your very own sauce to go with your tomatoes. That doesn't mean that you have to buy a jarred one from the supermarket. All you have to do is buy a tin of tomatoes with some garlic cloves, with a dash of sugar and salt, and also just a sprinkling of bicarbonate de soda, just to take out the acidity from the tomatoes, and you have yourself a rather delicious tomato sauce that you can serve with your pasta that is way fresher than buying a processed jar. And this is what I mean, like looking at food through different sets of eyes, kind of viewing the whole cooking process in a more organic way helps you to really see that, you know, you can make some great changes to your diet without breaking the bank and without adding a lot of time to your day. Like, these don't have to be great big measures. They can be little dishes that you implement here and there. And, you know, you've made a big difference to the way that you eat your food. And it's not just the food itself, but it's also the way that people approach meal times here. Now, meal times for me in the UK were a necessity. They were something that I had to do. I needed the energy, I needed to eat, but they weren't something that, you know, I would necessarily think were very special unless I had people over or something similar. So most evenings, if I didn't have anybody at my house, I would sit in front of the television and have a so-called TV dinner, eating the food on my lap, watching my favourite TV show. Really, really unhealthy. I've never done this in the entire 6 years I've lived in Italy, because I see here how meal times are so respected. People wait for everyone at the table to have their food before they start eating. There is a sense of everything stopping at the time when you are eating. No phones, no distractions, just being present with the people that you are eating with. If you're eating by yourself, it's a moment for yourself. So it's not the time to be doing something else at the same time. It's the time to just be with yourself and for yourself. So it's interesting. You can absolutely level up your life when it comes to the way you approach food, the way you approach meal times, and just the way you look after yourself in this way. Italian people really value food. In fact, a lot of people will say to you that, you know, the most important thing you can spend money on here is the food that goes into your body. And I see it, like supermarkets, the number one thing that pops up everywhere all over Italy is a supermarket. People love to buy food, fresh ingredients, they love to cook, they enjoy this whole process. And I think there's a bloody good reason why people live to such a long age here in Italy. It's definitely got something to do with the diet, but it's definitely got something to do with the approach to food and how they consume it and what they cook that makes the biggest difference. So learn from this. You too can adopt this principle wherever you are in the world. You've just got to look at this whole process with a different set of eyes. I also want to talk about this whole living in the present moment mentality that a lot of people have here in South Italy. Now, I feel really conflicted when I talk about this because on the one hand, I really agree with this philosophy. I think people spend too much time stuck in the past or future tripping, like thinking about what life's going to be like tomorrow, next week, next month, next year even. But we don't often spend enough time in the here and now. And actually, when you are really present in a situation, it's probably the one time in your life that you can feel relaxed. Because generally speaking, in a particular given moment, we can find a sense of peace. But when we are reflecting on the past or we are worried about the future, that is when we start to discover those feelings of anxiety and stress that naturally come with being trapped in one of those places. But being in the present moment normally eradicates that because that's where we can find our peace. But we don't spend enough time in the present moment. And up until moving to Italy, I definitely didn't spend enough time in the present moment. This is still something that I'm continuing to work on 6 years later, because as I said at the beginning, this philosophy I find a little bit difficult because I'm naturally somebody who likes to have goals and objectives and things to work towards. And that means that in some way I do have to think about the future a little bit. If I'm constantly just living in the present, day by day, I worry about two things. I worry that my life is consistently going to look the same, which I really don't want. And I also worry that I'm just not going to make any progress like that. Like, you know, if I don't make any plans, how can I do anything? How can I make progress in this way? But you don't have to take it to that extreme. You can take elements of this being in the present moment, this piano, slowly mindset that people have here, and actually use it to your advantage. Like when you find yourself in a place of anxiety or stress, you can ground yourself into the present moment, because often that stress and anxiety comes from either the past or the future. You can find ways to slow down what it is that you want to do. Not everything has to be done in a hurry, in a rush. Some things you can take your time to consider, to think about, to process. You don't have to run at breakneck speed in every single aspect of your life. And I think as well, like tied into all of this is the appreciation for things, because when you do slow down and when you do spend more time in the present moment, you do tend to appreciate more of what's going on around you than if you're just in a blind rush without really noticing anything of what's going on. So I feel like this is a really beautiful philosophy. It does trip me up sometimes because I have these future dreams and goals that I want to achieve, but I'm learning to adopt this principle in a way that isn't going to hold me back, but is actually going to support me in achieving what it is I want, but without burning me out in the process. Because that is the danger if you are constantly hustling, if you are constantly tripping yourself into the future, you're going to burn out at some point. You've got to ground yourself into this moment, because this is the only sure moment that any of us have. And this is something that I really agree with, and it's something that I am working on including even more into my life, because I know when you have this kind of philosophy, you definitely feel better about life, and therefore you've leveled up your experience, your expectation, the way that you feel about, you know, yourself and where you're headed. Being in the present moment, I think it is really where it's at. But you've just got to find the balance that suits you, because not everybody can immerse themselves 100% into the present, and that's okay. But I think to take elements of it and include that into your life can definitely help you to level up your experience of life in general. The afternoon nap. This is something that when I first moved to Italy, I was like, people actually nap in the afternoon? Like, now, this isn't for everybody. Some people don't participate in this. Some people only do it when it's really hot or on a Sunday when they've eaten too much. But for a lot of people, they do. And there is usually a quiet time in the afternoon, usually from 1 o'clock until around 4 o'clock, where people will eat lunch and then indulge in this kind of afternoon nap to see them through for the rest of the day. Now, at the beginning, I didn't do this. Now, 6 years later, when I can, I do. Because the benefit to this is that you have a lot more energy into the evening, and a lot of Italian people are night owls. They'll be up until quite late, either with their families or going out with friends. And so that hour or so in the afternoon where you can put your head down and close your eyes for a little bit helps to give you that energy until the evening. So there is a reason why this particular culture and the Mediterranean culture in general are able to stay up to like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, because of this little nap in the afternoon. And it does make a difference. I have to be honest with you. Like, I find that as long as I don't sleep for too long, like if I'm sleeping for 1 hour, 2 hours, it's a bit too much. But if I sleep for like 30 to 40 minutes, that's a bit of a sweet spot. I can wake up after that, have a coffee, and then I feel like I'm really refreshed for the rest of my day. And you have to remember as well, like people here in Italy work until like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night sometimes. So they almost need that little moment in the afternoon just to give them that energy for the rest of the day. So I think this is nice. I think that we should listen to our bodies more, and this is where I'm going with this when it comes to leveling up your life. If you're tired, sleep. Don't push through, don't hustle through, because when you're tired, you're not performing at your best state, which means you're not going to achieve the things you want to do. And if you do, it's going to take you so much longer than if you were feeling better and more refreshed. And so I think if you want to level up your life, listen to your body more. If you're tired, nap, have a sleep. 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you can manage, whatever feels good to you. But take this philosophy, because Italian people look after themselves in this way. They listen to their bodies, and as a result, they have a lot more energy into the evening to spend time with the people they care and love, and just to, you know, be out and about and enjoying life, because this is what life is, isn't it? Like, you know, we get so caught up in work and in making money, but there's got to be some enjoyment there somewhere, surely. And if we're constantly tired because we don't listen to our bodies and we don't rest, we are not able to have the energy to find the enjoyment. And trust me, there is no existence more miserable than one where you just get up, go to work, come home, sleep, get up, go to work, come home, sleep. No. Okay, you might sustain this for a short period of time, but on a long-term basis, that is not sustainable and is not going to make you happy. You've got to listen to yourself. So find ways to do that. If you don't fancy having a nap, find other ways that you can just switch off and relax for a little bit whenever your body feels tired. You've got to listen to yourselves. We don't do it enough, and I promise you it's the biggest thing that's going to level up your life, is that you feel good within yourself and that you have the energy to be able to sustain the things that you want to do. And this is really, really important. Walk more. This is something that I do a lot living here in Italy. I walk a lot, and Italian people like to walk as well, especially on a Sunday afternoon. If you live near the sea or you live in a city centre, there'll be this Sunday catwalk show where people will be dressed to the nines, walking along, like, you know, in their Sunday best with their families, friends, by themselves, whatever it may be. But Italian people like to walk around. It's a pastime as much as it is a form of exercise, and I like to do it too. I think, you know, the best way to really discover a place, whether you live there, whether you're visiting, is on foot. And I think as well, sometimes we completely forget about the simplicity of taking a walk. It's a great way to refresh your mind, to revitalise yourself, to reduce stress. Just simply putting on your shoes, getting out of your home and going somewhere different. It's a game changer. And I feel like, you know, we need to embrace this philosophy more. Even if we don't fancy dressing up in our Sunday best and going for a walk, we can still find somewhere pleasant to walk within and actually clear our head in this way. Because so many of us spend our days in front of computer screens and doing things that are not particularly social or very healthy for our bodies. And so, you know, we need to find the time to be outside, in nature especially, and exercising and moving ourselves, because when you move your body, you help yourself to feel better. And so this is something that I definitely think we can adopt from the way that Italian people do this, going out for a walk, especially after they've had their dinner or something like this, because it's a way to like move your body and, you know, energize yourself again as well. So it's a great little routine that I see a lot of Italian people do that I think can also make a change in your life too. Even if you manage to fit a walk in during your lunch break or after work, whenever it may be, walking is a great form of therapy in many different ways. So I definitely think you should give it a try. Live a little more spontaneously. This is something that, again, I have to say, some days I'm better at and other days I'm not. I can still be quite rigid. I come from the UK. It's very normal that we make plans 2 or 3 months in advance. So for this, to make plans in the moment for me, sometimes I embrace them and sometimes I'm like, but you're telling me to do something now? I'm not ready. So it really does depend, but I see a lot of beauty in this because in hindsight, the best moments I've ever had have been the spontaneous ones. They have not been the ones that I pre-planned 2 months ago. They have been the ones that happened in the moment, and they are the ones that I remember the most. And so I do think we need to adopt this kind of spontaneity that a lot of Italian people have and go with the flow a bit more with life. Life requires you to be flexible. Sometimes I'm not as flexible as I want to be, and I can be quite rigid in some respects, and this is something that I'm working on. But life does require a degree of flexibility in order for you to navigate the many twists and turns that you'll encounter. And so as part of that, you know, that means that you should say yes to opportunities, even if you don't have all the answers, or even if you don't feel like going, or even if you are not ready. You should just say yes, unless it really, really, really is something you cannot do. But if you're just sitting on the fence because you're like, oh, it's a last minute invitation, I like to be given notice, you just need to say yes, because it's those kinds of moments that have the, you know, possibility of changing your life. And so this is something else that I want to encourage you to do to level up your life. Be more spontaneous and be more open to opportunities and possibilities, even if you don't have all of the answers. So I take it back to 2022. when I first moved to Palermo. I moved with the exhibition of my book. I will link it up here. And this opportunity was part of a greater project organised by APA, who basically created this incredible open-air museum of different artwork, poetry, extracts from books. It was phenomenal, and sadly they're not in Palermo anymore, although the artwork is, but they've moved to Greece if I'm not wrong. But the amazing thing is about that particular concept was that I didn't have all the answers when I was asked to be involved in it. They wanted to feature my book. I was like, okay, and I didn't really know what else to do. But I accepted that opportunity through a DM on Instagram, and as a result, I ended up presenting my work at an exhibition event, and then now having a permanent piece of street art in Palermo connected to me, which is phenomenal. And you know, that's because I had the courage to say yes. And so that's why I encourage you to say yes, even if you don't have all the answers, because you never know where that opportunity is going to take you. And so I hope that this video has inspired you a little bit to level up your life in different ways, take more risks, eat better, look after yourself, and you know, live a bit more in the present. Because essentially, if you want to achieve anything in life, it all begins from right here. I'll see you in the next video.